Do you know what a crop sensor is? For many, the concept of a crop sensor can be a bit of a tangled web, but fear not. Today, we're going to untangle that web and break down the concept of crop sensors into simple, understandable terms. First, let's clear up a couple of misconceptions. 1, a crop sensor does not change the focal length of a lens, and 2, it doesn't alter the lens's aperture either. If you're already jumping to the comment section to argue, hold on just a minute while we delve into these points. The focal length of a lens, measured in millimeters, is the distance from the rear nodal point along the central optical axis of the lens to the image plane, marked with a phi on the top plate of the camera body. This is where your sensor or film plate is located. So a lens labeled as 50 mm has a focal length of 50 mm from the point where light rays converge within the lens to the image plane. Even if the lens is a zoom lens and can change its focal length, this focal length remains constant regardless of the camera or sensor behind the lens. Aperture, on the other hand, refers to the size of the opening in the lens that allows light in. It's controlled by a diaphragm that can adjust the size of the aperture opening. Aperture is expressed as a ratio, known as an F number, which is based on physical measurements and remains independent of the camera's sensor size. While the sensor size can affect depth of field, it doesn't impact the aperture itself. To truly understand crop factor, we need a reference point. In photography, that reference point is a piece of 135 film, or in digital photography terms, a full-frame sensor. So what is a crop sensor then? A crop sensor is a sensor smaller than a full-frame sensor. The term crop comes from the fact that it essentially crops out the outer areas of the image that a full-frame sensor would capture. The crop factor is the ratio of the full-frame sensor's diagonal, 43.3 mm, to the diagonal of the crop sensor. For example, a camera with an APS-C sensor has a crop factor of 1.5. This means that the APS-C sensor is 1.5 times smaller than a full-frame sensor. Consequently, the same lens on an APS-C camera gives a field of view equivalent to 1.5 times the focal length of the lens on a full-frame camera. To summarize, a crop sensor doesn't change the focal length of a lens or its aperture. It crops the image, giving a narrower field of view compared to a full-frame sensor. The crop factor is a measure of how much smaller the crop sensor is compared to a full-frame sensor. Understanding crop sensors helps you to make informed decisions about the camera and lenses you choose and how they will impact your photography. As always, the best camera is the one that you have with you. So go out, explore, and capture the world around you.